Yeah, it's kind of messy to share, I don't want anybody watching me eating it, but that is it.
All right, can you see my screen?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna make it maximum on, at least maximum for what?
So you're at a photo shoot.
I'm gonna try to do maximum. Yeah, that was the fire woman dancer slash whatever she was
Oh, yeah.
in Davenport.
Was that at Shark Fin?
Say that again?
Was that at Shark Fin?
No, it was just below at a beach that I'd never been to before. I don't recall the name of it, but actually it's excellent because there is just to the right of me standing there in the blue jacket, there is a tunnel that goes to the beach. And so it's a bridge that hasn't fallen yet. And there's some great views there and great setup for photography there.
Well, I should check it out. There's a similar hole at Shark Fin. And I shot I called it peekaboo, but I shot the Milky Way through there one time. But you had to like run back and forth with the waves.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the waves are a tiny bit further, or at least when we were there, we got there about 7 o'clock in the evening because we were shooting fire and it had to be later. So, but the waves were receding at that point.
Perfect.
So it was good.
So who set this up, Eric?
Uh, Irina set this up as a field trip,
Yeah,
and each of us paid, I think it was $25 to the woman that's holding the fire ring all the way to the right.
perfect.
And she had various pieces of equipment down in the lower section of the photograph.
Well, I wondered what all that was. Yeah.
Yeah, torches and things, and she
Wow.
lit everything on fire and spun them around, and it was interesting. It was a good experience.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, the shots that we saw were cool.
Yeah, I had a few. Okay, so tonight we are going to go through the final 3 tabs because if you look at the top of my screen, there's view, plugins, window, and I said 3. If you notice, there's 4, which is help, and don't ever use this help because it's worthless.
I know it never comes up with anything I need.
Yeah, Google is much better. You know, type in what you need and go to Google, and they will point you in the right direction.
Okay, good.
Okay, so for view, we're going to see a couple of things. And by the way, look at how my Photoshop is set up. So it's the default. All the tools are to the left. And actually, all the tools is a misnomer because if you click on these 3 dots and then move to the left or to the right, these are all the tools that aren't showing there. So there's,
Wow.
yeah, there are lots and lots of tools. We don't need most of them. And in photography, we only need about 10. And I just set up with Penton Perkins today. I took off all the ones that she doesn't need and got rid of them. So she only has the ones we need for photography.
Are you making house calls?
I am making house calls, yeah, for a price, however.
That's what I heard. That's cool.
But
That's great.
yeah, I have 3 people that I'm doing Photoshop classes with. So
That's good.
they prefer to learn, by having someone sitting there and helping them instead of online or etc. Okay. So tools are always to the left. Options for those tools. So I'm going to click on a tool. And this is the marquee tool. Options on these tools are up here in the top bar. This is just a reminder because I've said this in most of the classes. And then to the right are panels. And I just want to make sure everybody remembers these names of things. So tools, options, panels, because I'm going to refer to those.
I know it's a whole language.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so view. One other thing about my setup is that I have rulers turned on, which you'll see in the view, and it's not a default. So if you want to see what the dimensions are of your image, you can see it. And those dimensions are based on the DPI of your file. And this happens to be, let's see, I'm going to look at image size. So it's 45 inches by 30 inches at 72 DPI. So obviously, if I changed that to 300 DPI, it would be much smaller.
So Eric, are those the rulers a default or do you have to set it?
You probably need to set it. And so I will show you how to do that right now.
Okay,
So you go under view.
Yeah.
And you have to click this, it says rulers.
oh, okay.
And you can ignore most of the other things here. So I will talk to you about the things that are important right now. And rulers is important. I have extras checked, but I'm not using extras, so I'm going to uncheck that. And then when you go back to it, it's no longer checked. And it should stay that way. So once you check rulers, it should stay that way for all of your files. And it's an important thing to know for what the size is, especially if you're going to make a print. If you're going to make a 5x7 print, your files at 45 by 30 is more than adequate to fit in that size, you know, from a resolution standpoint.
And this
You can ignore
inches, is this inches or pixels?
it's inches, and then I'll show you something clever. So if you right click on the ruler, so you can see my arrow on the ruler, my cursor.
Yeah.
You can do it pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, picas, percentage. So you can have lots of choices.
And
But
so Eric, on this, let's say you want to do an 11 by 14, and
yeah,
you want to have enough resolution to print it well. Is there a rule of thumb by, you know, area versus dots per inch?
so if you want to do a print of any kind, 250 dots per inch is the minimum, and the maximum is really 300 dots per inch, because more than that is a waste. There's no printer that's going to be able to handle it.
You said 300 is max?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's go and do it.
So one more thing. There was a time when I got a photo that when I enlarged it for a print at Bay Photo, it wasn't sharp. And I messed around with that file, and it seemed like it sharpened up when I just put for resolution 600. Was I imagining things, or does that actually affect the potential density and sharpness of the photo and detail?
It will not help. The only thing would help is maybe they ran it through a denoise or something on their side to kind of help you out.
Okay.
But boosting the resolution is not going to help.
Okay.
Beyond,
So beyond 300 is there's no point.
right. So the standard at any inkjet house that's printing these via inkjet, which is Bay Photo and everybody else these days, their default is 150 DPI.
Really?
Really?
So if you send them 300, you automatically doubled it. So they've got plenty of file. If they want to do anything to it, you're okay.
I thought 300 was the
They may
DPI.
tell you that, but the equipment can only handle 150.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've been doing this for making inkjet on like large format printers and things like that.
Wow.
For 20 years. And I used to always send them 300 DPI files. And then one guy told me once, he goes, you know, we can't print more than 150. So, and we're having a hard time getting your big files.
Yeah, it's hard to transmit it, right?
Yeah, because I was doing like 20-foot long panels that were
Wow.
Yeah, it's for trade show work and things like that. So anyway, yeah, they were having a hard time getting my files, so that's the way, just an overview of how that works. But
Well,
let's,
does that, excuse me, one question though.
yeah,
If you're printing something, say, I don't know, 20 by 24, whatever it is,
yep,
and you're putting it at 150 DPI,
yeah.
how do you know, I guess through experience, or how big you can go, or how does it affect the print size, I guess is my question.
Well, if you have the resolution set at 150, then if your print, like, okay, let's use this example, right? This is JPEG, by the way. So this is not as big as my camera will go, but let's just talk about this file for a second. And I'll show you how I would do it. So image size,
Yeah.
and this tells me it's 45139 by 30 inches. But what I want is 300 DPI, which was roughly this 72 DPI right now. So times 4 is roughly 300 DPI. It's 388. So close enough. Oh, something else, by the way, is that when you set up your image size, I recommend you always use Preserve Details 2.0, and this will help your file. There's lots of choices when you're printing or setting up a file in Photoshop, but Preserve Details is the best.
Good.
So let's say if I want to use 300 DPI, then that means my width has to be roughly a fourth of that. So I could go 11 inches. And that's going to give me a height by 7 inches, this particular file, because it's been cropped. And then I change it to 300 DPI. And watch what happens to the image on the left. It will change ever so slightly in size. I'm going to say, okay. Oh, there it goes. Okay, it got an eighth of an inch larger than it was. So, so that's 300 DPI for 11 by 7. So Mercury, if you wanted 11 by 14, you have to make sure your file is big enough to handle that.
So then that's the next question, is the relationship between your sensor or your, obviously, ultimately your cropped size. I'm shooting with a 50 megapixel sensor,
Right.
and but it's going to be printed at 150 DPI. So I guess what's less clear to me is what's the relationship between what comes off of your, say I use it full frame and I don't crop it, and that's a 50 megapixel sensor. I guess I'm wondering, how does that density compare between DPI and what comes off of your pixel count?
So what you can do is look at one of your full frame images or one of your 50 megapixel images, right, that you haven't cropped.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, my image size is going to be, at that size, it's going to be like 6,000 pixels, or it's going to be big.
Something like
Bigger than
that.
my camera will do. So let's say it's 6,000 pixels. It might even be bigger than that, I'm not sure. So I'm going to put in 6,000. It automatically creates the height for me. And then my resolution, I only need 150. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to say, okay. And then I'm going to go back. See, it actually made it a little bit smaller than it was, by the way. And then I'm going to go image size again. Oops, why is it 3,000? I changed it to 6,000.
You only put 600.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. It should say, it should let me do that. Okay, now that makes sense. It's much, much bigger. So if I go up to my ruler, you can see that I can print a 40-inch by 27-inch.
Okay.
Tells you what size you can print. So
So that
I suggest, Mercury, you take one of your 50 megapixel files. They're not all going to be the same size, by the way. But take one of your files, your raw files, and see how many pixels wide by length. And if you have your ruler turned on in inches, then you'll be able to see what your max size at
Yeah,
150.
very good.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
But if you wanted to make it like 8 by 10 or whatever,
Uh-huh.
then you put those size in, you make it 150.
Well, I would suggest you make it 300 because that's double the resolution that Bay Photo requires.
But I thought they only did 150, so am I
They,
confused?
they do, but that gives them room to play. Like I said, if they run it through some sort of processor on their end, which they
Yeah.
do, then that gives them extra pixels to work with. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Can I just say a recent experience or a little bit ago? I back to when we had some prints at the JEVC, what is it, JCC.
Yeah.
I printed through Bay Photo 24 by 36, and you know, and they're pretty large size files, and they printed very well. But I was surprised in one of them, what I thought was sharp for a couple of birds and something else in the image. When it was expanded to 24 by 36, I was like, oh shit, wasn't as sharp as I thought.
Yeah.
So,
And that's going to be true, but you know what? You can emulate that on your screen, Mercury.
uh-huh.
I've messed with this file a few times. So watch this when I blow it up. You're going to be able to see what happens. So if we actually wanted to be 40 inches, and I'm going to show you these rules guides, I'm sorry, later, but 40 inches. So that's about a quarter of it right there. So I'm going to use that. And if I want to make that 10 inches wide, you following me on this?
Uh-huh.
Because I want to emulate what it's going to look like at 40 inches.
So times 4. You expand it 4 times.
So I
So
took
what's the
1/4
density gonna be?
and expanded. I'm not going to cut it. I'm just going to hit Control plus on a PC or Command plus. And I'm going to go up until that section is about the full width of this.
Yeah, so you can really see.
So
And so
you can now see, yeah, how clear or unclear your image
yeah,
is.
yeah. And I would realize in retrospect that when you're in Lightroom, you could just go, well, 100%, you know, and if it's still sharp, then it's going to be sharp. But obviously, I haven't done that.
Yeah, I always check all my files to blow them up to what the actual size will be about so I can see. Okay, so view rulers is the most important thing on here. All these other things are not something you need. And
So how did extras get checked again?
yeah, I don't know, because I messed with something.
Okay.
It didn't like it, but it's not checked now. Oh, because I didn't save the file in between. Okay. A lot of these things have to do with making websites, and you can ignore all that. It's not for photographers. And I wouldn't worry about the zoom in and out, because if you do Control plus or Command plus, that makes it bigger. Command minus,
Right.
Control minus makes it smaller. And those are keyboard operations that are much faster than trying to figure out zooming in and out, et cetera, et cetera. Another little trick about zooming in and out, by the way, has to do with all the way down here in the lower left. You see what size this is?
Right.
33.3%,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So you can control that very easily. If you only wanted to make it a little bit bigger because of, you wanted to see some feature or something like that, then I could change that to 45 percent and then hit enter and it enlarges it a little bit.
If you set it at 100%, would it show you what your end result would be?
Yes. 100%. And that shows you my end result with this particular file, yes. Okay. I think that's everything. All these other things are
So there's a shortcut for that, Control+1.
Control+1.
Says shows 100% fit artwork on screen, 100% Control+1.
Oh, okay. Very good. Thank you, Murphy. Okay, so plugins. Does anybody have any plugins in their Photoshop?
No, I've never understood them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I use Topaz on a regular basis.
You what?
I use Topaz on a regular basis.
Right, right. So that's where Topaz or other things would go. But you have a plugins panel, and that'll show you all the plugins that you have. And as you notice, I don't have any plugins because I don't use them. You can also go browse plugins, and that'll show you everything that Adobe sponsors as a plugin that's safe to use, and you can pick whatever you like. And I wouldn't choose anything that doesn't have 4 stars or more. 3 stars means it's horrible. 4 stars means it's pretty good. 5 stars means yes. So this is Reflections for Adobe Photoshop. This is 3 stars. It's horrible, I am sure. So from experience, and that's why I've gotten rid of almost all of my all of my plugins actually. But you can search through them, and occasionally there's something that's interesting. So
So Silver Effects Pro and those kinds of things be up there, or do you access them the normal way? Right.
I think it is a program, so I don't think it's available, but that's a good question. Let's search. Most popular, where is the search? I'm not sure this is a search for plugins. No, that's Creative Cloud.
I can't, are you searching in a screen that we can see? I'm not seeing it.
I am trying to, but it's not offering me anything, so I guess you can't see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
After Effects is there, but not Silver Effects Pro or. So these are programs off to the side that have plugins, but these are only Adobe's. Yeah, these are only Adobe's. So you would have to put your plugin, you'd have to load your plugin into Manage Plugins.
Eric, let me ask you something related, but
Yeah.
you'll tell me the difference. I know like Larry Shapiro and a lot of guys that use Photoshop a lot have like a whole column on the right of the picture that gives them all sorts of different options for whatever they want to do to their photo. Oh, that's what it is. It has to do with light, light and color. It has, oh shoot.
Not Camera Raw.
No, not Camera Raw. Color toning. There's what is it? There's well,
Over here.
yeah, on the right-hand column, just next to the picture, it seemed like there was a bunch of
Yeah, can you see
like
what
filters or
can you see what I just opened?
Okay,
Is
yeah,
this
no,
what you're?
these are things that, yeah, they might have effects like that. These are programs that you buy though. People offer, um,
Yeah, if you have a, if
maybe
you have,
almost like references or something. I'm not sure.
yeah, if you have a plugin with special effects, it will show up in a panel, these are panels, right?
Uh,
So it would show up over in a panel.
okay.
Um, Okay, so plugins basically, if you're gonna buy a panel, or excuse me, a program, and it also will have a plugin that you can add to this area and then
Okay.
look at it. Now, window, this is the most important one. So, under window, you see workspace. And I'm in Photoshop Essentials, which is what I
As a
use
photographer.
typically. If you were to choose photography, you would get most of the tools and panels and things like that. But you're not going to get a few of the tools that I like to use. So that's why I use Essentials. One of those tools is Type, because I'll do birthday cards for my kids and I'll do Christmas cards for my family and I'll do, so I like to use text and do different effects with text. So Essentials gives you that.
So tools is very much like photography with a couple of added tools. Is that true?
Yes, yes.
So what would photography give you? Nothing different?
It will change a little bit. See the tools changed over here?
So it gives a histogram.
Gives you the histogram, which that's another thing I don't use, because if I look at it and I know that my whites are blowing out, I certainly know they're blowing out by looking at them on the screen. So a histogram, I think, makes it more difficult. I use my eye and the actual photograph what's happening rather than the mathematical equivalent in the histogram, but that's up to individuals.
Yeah.
But you can see the tools over here have changed quite a bit. And they've added a few things. For instance, this is a patch tool, and it doesn't work as well as they think it does, so I don't use it. This is content aware, but you can do content aware through edit, fill, and then content aware. You have to have a selection in order to get it to work, but it's there already. And so I prefer to have fewer tools. So I go back to window and I choose Essentials. It gives me the tools that I use most often. Okay. So here you have 3D, and Adobe is no longer going to support the 3D in Photoshop. It's building a new program for 3D that they will sell you separately. So don't start messing with 3D, because if you end up liking it, you're not going to be able to have it. Actions. So actions are interesting in that I'm going to show you something else. So here's my history panel. So look over on the right, and this shows everything I've done to this image here since we started. I put in guides, which are, I'm going to show you how to do that. So you just click on the ruler and pull it over, and that's for aligning things. Click on the top ruler, pull it down. And something that it's obvious for is very difficult horizon lines. So this horizon line that you're seeing goes up and down the rock because it's not perfectly flat. So I have adjusted for that, unless I took the photo just absolutely perfectly, which I may not have. So I adjusted the horizon line. And I used guides in order to give me an area of what I want to use. So this is a marquee tool that I'm using to select. I think I'm using. Okay, so the marquee tool, then I do Control T, which is a transform. And if you have a guide there, you can do very, very specific rotation on the image. So if that's a better horizon line for you, then you can use that. I can also check, in this case, I can check my own body to see if I'm vertical. And I can see how vertical I am. And actually, that's probably a better horizon line than the one I had.
That's because you got a sloping beach.
Yeah, right.
No, he went to the gym.
That too. And so if I was to use that and do that, and I'm going to go Control minus or Command minus, you can then, I use the marquee tool, by the way, to crop because I do it visually. There's also a crop tool in the Photoshop tools, which I have turned off because I don't use it. And then you go image crop. And now it's been cropped.
Okay, select it with the marquee tool and then go image crop. Okay.
Exactly. And that allows you to do lots of things. You can do, like, if I just wanted her, hang on, my mouse is not happy. If I just wanted her, I could do one of two things. I could say, right click and say layer via copy. Or I could cut her out of the image, but I'll do copy. Go back to layers. And there she is. And I could crop just that image if I wanted to, or I could move her somewhere else. And so now we have, I'm going to move her. So now we've got two instructors. And you'd have to knock out the background, which you can do with other tools. But
Now let me ask you this. Let's suppose for different purpose, you
yeah,
want to select her out and
Yep.
use her as part of a larger image, or she'd be larger in a different image.
yeah,
Does Photoshop have anything like, for instance, in Topaz, you can double the image, the pixel counter? Can you do that in Photoshop?
you can. Photoshop has something called super resolution.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember where it is.
So in Lightroom, it's under, they actually have a button for denoise. And
Yeah,
also, super resolution is part of the same panel that comes up.
okay. Can you use denoise, by the way? I assume that's Topaz?
Well, Lightroom actually has now,
Yeah,
this is a place where Topaz is making Lightroom a better product. It has a good denoise button. And it used to be that, like, if you went to super resolution, that was pretty much all that was there. You could, like, it would quadruple the number of pixels. It would be twice as wide, twice as tall.
right.
That's actually less clear to me as to how to do that now, but in the same window, it does a denoise, and it really does a lot, like Topaz, to clean up the background while slightly sharpening the subject.
Yeah,
I've been using it much more often, Topaz less.
yep. So that's actually in Camera Raw, even though you're seeing it in Lightroom, it's
Right.
Camera Raw, and
Same thing.
Photoshop uses it as well. However, it only works on RAW files, right?
Okay.
You can't use the new denoise in Lightroom or Photoshop on JPEGs or TIFFs or other files. You have
But
to,
super resolution you can.
yes, you can. And like I said, I rarely use it, so I'm not sure where it is.
Okay,
But look up super resolution and it'll tell you.
it'll be there somewhere, okay.
Or you could just do it in Lightroom and export it to Photoshop,
Port it back in, right?
since you know where it is. Okay, let's go back to actions. So in actions, what this is a group of things. Anything you do to this image, it's like the history of what you did, right? And in this case, there are some actions that are already done. Now let's see if it'll let me apply. This is called wood frame, 50 pixel. And let me see where the application is. Oh, I have it set to the layer that had her on it, which was very small. So, okay. So I've got wood frame. So what it did was it added pixels around to create a frame. And there are some that are automatically done here. So you can look through all the various actions and see if there's anything that are worthwhile for you. And just play with it just so you understand it. It's not something you're going to use every day,
But
but
then what you just did there, instead of a white rectangular frame, can you make it a pattern, look like gold leaf or anything?
yeah, anything you want. But that requires you setting up an action. So I would suggest that you could do a step-by-step. Google has a whole bunch of videos on it. So this is setting, it's called recording an action.
Recording an action, okay?
And let's say you wanted to do your gold leaf frame, Mercury, but you wanted to apply it to 10 images. So you set up an action, you record the action, and then all you do is you have a video button here like you're going to play it, and you play it, and it'll add it to each of your images. So every time you open it up, you go to actions, find the one you just recorded, play it, and it adds it automatically.
Do you have set actions that you use over and over, Eric, or?
No, I don't, because all of my images are individual. It's more for someone that's doing, like, if you had 10 landscape photographs of Yosemite and you wanted them all to look the same, at least in the frame or at least in some way, then you would have an action that you would apply that way.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. You can ignore these. Your brushes are already set for you. You don't have to mess with those. Channels are the color channels, but I'll show you that later in one of these courses to show you how you can use channels to your advantage, but it's complicated to do in one of these settings. Character, you notice that's checked. Now, what that means is I have my text on, and this shows you all the fonts. I have a lot of fonts because I own a lot of fonts, and Adobe has given me a whole bunch more. So there are a lot of fonts in my library,
Cool.
and they come in useful for me in my commercial work anyway. Not so much in photography, except to choose my signature. Okay, but you can choose type size. You can ignore metrics. There's only two choices, metrics or optical, and either one work just fine. Some things that it does is the height of your text. You always keep it at 100%. But if you really had to jam something into an area, you can just change the width, say, example, and it's going to make it smaller. So if I change it to like 80%, whatever line of text I typed is gonna compress in like this, so it will fit within whatever area you need it to. It'll change the look of it some, but it will compress. And do you know what kerning is? Raise
Yes.
your hand.
Yeah, I do.
Kerning. Mary Ellen knows what kerning is. Mercury, do you know?
No, what is it?
The
So
space,
kerning is a space between letters.
Ernie, okay.
And I'll show you an example here. I'm going to set the kerning to 0, which is the standard. And I'm going to type something here that says Mercury Freedom. And that's the standard for this particular, this is Franklin Gothic is my typeface. And just for fun, I'll show you what happens if I change it to something else. It's going to look different. Edwardian script, very difficult to read for you guys, I'm sure.
Yeah, in fact,
So I'll go to Helvetica, and I'm going to go with Helvetica Roman, which is a pretty normal looking font. And then right now, I had put in 80% before, so this text is not how it normally appears. So I'm going to go back, put 100% in. And that's what Mercury Freedom looks like at 100% normally. But I'm going to change it to like 60%. And there's Mercury Freedom squished in at 60%. So now let's go back to kerning. I'm going to do Control Z. I'll get you back to 100%. Sometimes letters like the distance between, I'm going to blow this up so you can see it better. See the distance between the F and the R?
uh-huh,
It's a little bit more than between the R and the E or the E and the E.
okay.
So you could do individual letters and make them closer together. I could select those two letters, and my kerning is what this VA says here. And I can do -50. And it just brought those two.
Light them right up, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that's about the right amount, right?
Yeah, that looks good, actually.
That was a good guess. Your M and your E are too far apart.
I agree.
And this all comes back to years ago when people actually cared about that, right, Mary Ellen?
And the C can be closer to the R, yep.
I used to do publications, so we definitely did that.
Yeah. I tell you, I had some clients that were like over the moon about kerning, and they marked shit up and sent it back
Wow.
all the
Oh, boy.
time.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Other people could care less, but if someone was very knowledgeable, this is the way it was done. I mean, you had typed letters for everything.
It reminds me of newspaper, like a typesetter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's where all the terms came from. And it was lead type, and that's how things were done. All right, so that's your character panel, and you can choose the color of the type there too. Make it red. So lots of different choices. Down here, you can make it super bold, and that's called faux bold because in this particular font, there's not like a super black, which is what most fonts that are super thick are. So it kind of fakes it for you. You can underline it.
And this is because you're in Essentials. You got all these tools. in
Essentials, and it gives me this
Sorry.
type panel under window, and I've checked character. So it allows me to do type characters.
Okay,
And this is just, I'm just trying to give you a quick overview of it. So when you're using it in Photoshop, it's quite handy and takes a little while to get really super efficient at it, but you can, and then you can move it around, by the way, wherever you want. Which a lot of people get kind of freaked out. Now, how do I get it to where I want it? Well, if you want it down here, you put it down there. And then you do Control T and you can scale it. So the size of what a signature would be.
Pretty sure I wouldn't use red though.
Pretty sure I wouldn't either. Okay, let's go back over here and see what other panel important things. Oh, here's one of the most important things. If you start using the clone tool, which I recommend everyone learn it, it's not that difficult. I've covered it in one of my previous classes. And once I'm teaching whole images and just take an image from beginning to end in future classes, then cloning is important. So if you go to clone source, you don't have to check it. You just go to clone source. It's a panel. And the most important thing about clone source is nothing you see except this little box needs to be checked. Show overlay. Why is that important? I will show you. So with the clone tool, it's over here. It's this thing looks like a rubber stamp. And I am, whoops, won't let me stamp. There you go. I had text on the layer over here, and now I've got the image up. And it gives me a cursor. So this is about the size of my cloning tool that I'm going to use. And what do I want to do? Okay, I am going to take my clone tool and I am going to go over here in the sand. And I'm going to get rid of this water bottle, this backpack, and this red sweater that belonged to the fire dancer person. And I'm going to hit my Alt key, which will determine where my source is. Whoops. I have to look up here. Okay, so tools here, options. Right now I had it set, last time I used it, it's set to 48% because I was working on a photograph. But I want 100% because I want to hide these things. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick some sand. I'm going to hit my Alt key and then I'm going to click. And that's going to give me sand. And if you can see over here, you see how it's giving me a visual on the sand?
You got sand on the frame, on the wood frame there.
Yes. And that tells me ahead of time, it carries it over to where the image is. If I didn't have that box checked on clone source, it would just be blank and you wouldn't know exactly how it was doing that.
So just run that through real fast because I was writing and I'm not sure I got it all.
All right. It's also recorded, Mary Ellen. So let me go back.
That was pretty effective, Eric.
Yeah, no, it's a great tool to use for lots of things. But what you want to look for is you go to clone source under window.
Yeah.
And then you make that show overlay is checked. Otherwise, if it's not checked, well, let's uncheck it. So if it's unchecked, then when I come over here and I choose some sand.
Of course, your equipment's already gone.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to choose, and I was going to do this area, right? The problem is that it doesn't show me what's in that tool. If I come over here, it makes it, but it doesn't show me inside the cursor. And that's very important if you're trying to line up something. Like if I was trying to line up the crack in this rock,
right?
Let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to try to line up the crack in this rock, and if you can see at the top, it's chipped off. But let's say I wanted this part of the rock to go continue straight up and not show that chip.
Right.
I choose my clone source, and then I go up there and I don't know exactly where it is. But now let me show you, and I just paint it. It moved it to the left, and I wanted it exactly in line. So if I go back and go Window, Clone Source, and I have this little box checked, then when I choose this and move up, it's going to give me a shadow of that. Can you see the, can you see that well enough?
Yeah.
It's going to give me the edge of that. It's going to show me that piece of that rock so that I can
Perfect.
extend that up perfectly.
Yeah, so you can place it where you want it.
Very good.
Exactly. Yeah. So very important to have that checked. I was with Pam Peterson today, or Pam. That's interesting. Pam Peterson.
Perkins.
Yeah, Pam Peterson was a girlfriend of mine in college.
Say no more.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Anyway. So she had it on her system, was unchecked, and I couldn't figure out why it was doing that. And so finally I looked at Clone Source to see how it was set up and realized that it wasn't checked. So, okay. And that's just checked, not here, but inside the panel, Clone Source.
Gotcha.
All right.
Just a comment. I noticed in trying to find the Zoom link tonight that on the Los Gatos Saratoga Hammer Club website, under special interest groups, when I came to Photoshop, that's where it shows all your pre-recorded previous classes.
If Jim has put them up there, then they're there.
Okay.
If not, you can go to one of the old ones that I sent you, and then you can, my channel is
The
there.
link on the previous, just go back to an invite.
Yeah, not to an invite, go back to one of the previous recordings that I send out after each time.
Okay.
So the day after, I always send out the recordings and then some additional resources. Okay. So this just turns on panels. History is an important one. It is with my layers, and my history is there just to show these are all the things that we've done tonight to this poor image, which is a lot.
Yep.
But if at any time you want to go back to it, you come to it and you say, okay, I want to go back to here where Mercury Freedom was up there.
Right.
And it takes you back.
You got
However, if you notice, the backpack is now back, the sand, so that work is gone. So it just takes you back to a previous place in history, and then you have to redo anything in front of that.
So Eric, when you're, cloning over, say, this backpack and whatnot, the same pattern of the sand is being replicated over and over and over, right? Or
Yeah.
not?
It is replicating this area. So let me bring it back. Okay, there's the backpack.
Right.
I go into the clone tool, and let's think of it in terms of this little red swatch there, whatever that is in the sand.
Yeah.
All the way around like this. This whole area is what's being duplicated to fill up all of that.
But you're having to set that area to size it over there, or it just does it?
So what I'm setting it to is say, I want to choose this area. And then as I move around this area, it's going to choose.
Oh, so you move around before you go over there.
No, you don't have to
What
move
he's
around.
saying is it knows in the photo what area he had selected, and then it's duplicating that whole area whereas he moves his mouse around.
Right. So if I choose this as my selection, this is what I want to use.
Right.
When I move over here, you see that red thing is now inside of the circle.
Yeah.
But guess what? As I draw it, that
Yeah,
red
the-
thing
you know, where
stays
the
there
cro-
because,
crosses.
so look to the right, you see that plus sign?
Yeah,
That's where the cursor is now. That's where the area is it's using to
That's very
cover up.
clever.
It's using new sand.
okay, but you're not having to select new sand, it does it by itself.
Yep, it says, I'm gonna choose some nearby sand because that's what you're doing
Uh,
is you're blotting out this whole area. So,
Wow, okay,
yeah. And
that's
That's
cool.
actually very sophisticated.
yeah, it is. And I'll take this backpack out too while I'm there. No backpacks allowed. And there's a shoe over there, which belongs to the fire dancer lady.
You could be involved in misinformation, Eric.
I could.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could cause a lot of trouble.
It's already been caused, you're okay.
Mercury, I saw you standing in the crowd at 9/11. I have a picture of it.
Say it again.
No, January 6th.
Oh, yeah. We'll use that. Mercury, I have you in full camouflage gear at January 6th.
Remember, that was me up in the tree with the MR-15.
That was you.
Yeah, yeah, no, I admit it.
Yeah,
That's kind of scary, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah, no
It is. And I am good enough at it that I don't think anybody could tell.
kidding.
By the way, in this month's newsletter, there will be an article about AI and how the big fear is that people are going to take other people's photographs and AI them and that sort of thing. But there is now, Google is in the forefront of this, is adding watermark images inside of your image. So nothing that's visible, you won't be able to see it, but you will be able to know that your photograph is intact or it's been messed with.
Wow.
But if somebody takes it and messes with it and you don't know about it,
Right.
it doesn't protect it, right?
No, you have to know about it, or someone can then check and see
The
if this is,
detective could figure it out. You're saying it's like leaving a marker.
yeah, it leaves a trail so that someone could backtrack it.
It's like you like a pet, like you got a chip attached to your image.
Yeah, exactly.
God, I was thinking breadcrumbs. Okay, you're in a chip.
Yeah, I'm all-
a chip with a Wi-Fi connection that can reach no matter where it goes.
Well, that's interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was history, which is important. Layers, I already have it turned on, but you can turn it on here if you don't, and there's our layers. And I'm going to get into layers pretty deep in a few months, but for now, I'm just going to tell you can turn it on and so you can see them. Okay, Navigator, you don't need that. A lot of this is for desktop publishing paragraphs and things like that. You don't need all that stuff. There are a whole selection of shapes, but that's not something we use in photography very often. And the rest of it is just not really necessary. So layers,
Layers.
history. Let me see if layers. I've
Now,
got all in.
What was character, Eric?
Character is type. It's
Oh,
up
back
here.
to that. Okay.
And it also has
I
paragraphs.
see. There's the panel over there. Okay.
Yeah. But those are the things that you're going to need. Character, clone source to make sure that box is checked. Otherwise, it makes cleanup
Right.
much more difficult. Histogram, if you want it turned on, you can turn it on here. Like I said, I don't use it, but lots of people like it. You could even put notes on your image if you're sharing it with somebody else. I don't do that either, but you could. And that's pretty much the important things. And that is the last 3 tabs. We've already gone through all of these tabs in previous sessions. And what that means is that next month, I'm going to take an image any image. You guys can send me an image. If you don't, I'll use an image of mine. And I'm gonna go from ground zero. I'm gonna go camera. I'm gonna open up my raw file and then look at it and say, okay, here's how I would change this file or enhance this file or crop this file or dump this file. It's no good.
We won't send you one.
Okay.
No,
So,
that's great. I'd like to see that.
yeah, we'll go from beginning to end, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm not gonna use all the tools every time because that would take forever, because I sometimes spend several hours on these photographs, but the hour that we have together, I will use several tools, and then the next image, I will try to use different tools so that we're making use of those in different ways.
That's super.
And that should help everybody's processing and images. Here's one quick thing I'll show you. I'm gonna move this woman on that. Remember, I put her on a layer. So let's move her down here into the sand. And I don't know how good a job it'll do, but I'm gonna do on that layer, I'm gonna select subject and see if it selects. Yeah, it did. So
How'd you get her on the sand first?
So I had copied her as a layer. Remember, I drew a square around her.
Okay,
And then I right clicked and
Right,
said
you go right.
layer via copy. So I made a copy of her. I moved her down here. She's still there with the move tool, which is the crosshairs in the upper left. And now it selected her, but guess what? I want the background. So all I have to do is say select inverse. Whoops. Select inverse. Huh. Let's see if it actually did it. And then delete. Oh yeah, it did. Okay. And there she is down there.
Pretty good, actually.
wow.
And she looks tiny.
Funny that she looks smaller, that's right.
She's actually the same size as she was up here.
But
But she looks
but-
fatter because
but-
she's against a lighter background.
It's an
but-
optical
but-
illusion.
by perspective, she should look bigger. Maybe that's why she comparatively looks smaller.
Exactly. So your brain is telling you, hey, she's up here. She's closer to me. She should be bigger. So we make her bigger. And
Yeah.
now she's bigger.
Wow.
Anyway.
Now you gotta mess around, make shadows around her legs and shit.
And that's very easy, by the way, Mercury.
Yeah,
No,
I'm going to say layer. I'm going to double click on it. And it's going to call up a panel. And at the bottom, it says drop shadow.
wow.
I can click on drop shadow. I want the angle to be, I want the shadow to be under her feet. So it's straight up and down. So it's at 90 degrees, straight up and down. And then I have a black shadow that the opacity is not very much. So I'm going to bring it up just so you guys can see it better. And then my distance is a key element. See how I'm making a shadow. Anyway, we just need a tiny bit of shadow underneath her feet. So it looks like she's fairly normal. And then the size of the shadow makes a difference. If I make it a little too big, it's going to be all around her too. But if I just make it a little bit, there's a shadow underneath her. And I can reduce the opacity so it looks a little more real. Yeah.
If you're really gonna do that, what would you do with the foot that's a little higher elevation on the sand? It looks like she's kicking now, or she's standing on one foot.
Yeah, I guess that foot was a little bit under the sand before.
Yeah, would you put sand under it? What would you do?
So it didn't look so funky.
Yeah,
I would do this, Mary Ellen. I would layer via copy and put a new foot on her.
Oh my gosh.
Good for it.
So she has 2 left feet, right?
Yeah, she has 2 left feet. Very good.
But now, Eric, same thing, so as you're doing that, I'm almost like you could take the eye drop tool or something and use dark and just kind of reduce the opacity and just kind of paint around below her on the sand a little darker area. Can you do something like that?
You bet. So you'd have to go to the sand layer now. Because she's on her own layer up, she's right there.
There, well, minus her foot.
So you have to go down to the sand layer and then blow that up and use the dodge and burn tool,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is right here. And you recognize those terms. So you go to burn. And sand is pretty much highlights, right? It's lighter. The exposure is 5% right now in the options, but I'd make it a little more. It doesn't have to be too much more. And my brush is a little too large. Hardness needs to be as soft as possible, which is all the way to the left. And then I can draw in here. You probably can't see it, so I'm going to increase the exposure, but you don't need very much. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah, so, but yeah,
Yeah.
so it would be right at her feet, it would be dark right underneath, but also pretty much under her whole body and in between her legs.
You could create, you could make a shadow if there were shadows then. I could use a dodge and burn tool to make a shadow area inside there if I wanted to. And
Yeah, okay.
yeah, we can create a little shadow back here that maybe the sun was in the upper,
Yeah, right.
in front of her. Yeah, if the sun was in front of her, then we could create this shadow of her.
Yeah, very good.
And there she is.
Wow.
And you remember the elephant shot that I did? With the little girl on the elephant's
Yeah,
back?
right. You wanted to ride an elephant or whatever.
Yeah, little girl on the elephant's back. And that's what I did to create the shadow for the little girl. On the
But just what you did there, and you're just messing around, but already it looks better. Already there is a sense of a shadow.
Yep, there is.
Very subtle, but it is.
Yeah, your brain fills in all that stuff. It's
That's
pretty
right.
amazing. Well, my brain fills it all in.
Yeah, no, because no, exactly. Like otherwise, there's like something missing. Like Mary Ellen said about looks like the foot's kicking or something, but now
Yeah.
your brain doesn't say nothing. It looks like it's okay.
Yeah,
He's
Okay.
grounded. Yeah.
yeah, it looks like the real thing. She should be actually even a little bit larger than she is, but I won't do that. All right, well, that gets us through all of those. And like I
Wow.
said, next time I'm going to open a raw image, and then from ground zero, the first thing that happens when you open a raw image is it opens camera raw, which so it will look exactly like a Lightroom to you until I get all my adjustments made there, and then I'll open it. And when I open it, it opens in Photoshop.
Wait, so what you're gonna open is the same as we would see in Lightroom,
A raw file, if you open a raw file right now
right?
in Lightroom, it should open up Camera Raw with all the options, the sliders and everything.
But it doesn't say camera off. We're just,
But you work on the image of camera raw, and when
Yeah, exactly. It's called, I'm sorry, it's called the develop module. So when you,
yeah. Okay, so it's the same as camera raw.
yeah, I'll show you real quick. So filter, and I go to Camera Raw filter in Photoshop, and it will look very familiar. Once it opens up, it's going to be slow because I've been working my fanny off this week, but here's all the sliders and everything you're used to seeing. So that's the Camera Raw or develop module in Lightroom.
Aha. So.
Do you use this, Mary Ellen?
Well, I'm just thinking if, as we're following you along, we go this way instead of do Lightroom and go over, or
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. Okay,
It's the same. Yep. If you're following along and you want to do it in Lightroom, you can. And then you just need to open it in Photoshop when in the recording I go to there, then you can edit in Photoshop. And
okay,
and in Lightroom, you go to photo at the top and then it says edit in Photoshop.
right.
Yeah.
So I just checked, and in Lightroom, that denoise is under the detail panel.
Yes, and it's here, by the way. But remember what I told you, this is a JPEG. So
Mm,
it's only going to give you some basic sharpening and reduction, noise reduction.
Okay.
If it was a camera raw file, it would give you all of the denoise, all the new stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your efforts, Eric.
yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot tonight.
Okay, good. Well, put it to use. And as soon as we're done here, go check and make sure that your clone source is checked in that.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, good.
Because
Absolutely.
I've talked to two people now where it was not checked and it's like, what the heck?
I'm
And
sure mine's not.
maybe
sure.
not.
Either.
It's kind of a Mac thing, it seems like, but the
Mm.
two machines that I have seen this last year, but then I just saw it again on a PC about 2 weeks ago. So anyway, it's supposed to be checked. It will help.
Good. Terrific.
All right,
Thank you,
everybody.
Eric.
Glad you showed up, Mary Ellen. See you both.
All right.
All right, take care.
And I finished dinner. All's good.
Okay, September 11th is the competition.
The 11th. Oh, thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, Monday
Ah.
the 11th.
Okay.
And then
See
the
you- oh, yeah,
18th,
holiday weekend. That's right.
and then the 18th is a program night. And that's going to be on all the SIGs. So each of the SIG people like me are going to give 5 or 10 minutes about what the SIG does. And
Oh,
so the
cool.
whole club knows everything about that.
I'll be in Brazil.
Ah, getting a wax.
We're going to Pantanal.
Oh, wow. Great for you.
And I'll be at my college sorority reunion.
Oh, you have a 10-year reunion already?
No, yeah, right. We're down to 1 year now. We're all-
You're sweet.
1 year.
yeah, we're getting to the age of, we have one that peeled off this week, which was actually very sad. So I don't mean to
Oh.
make fun of it. But yeah, there's 18 of us now. We're 17.
Wow.
Yeah, wait 10 years, it'll be 5 or whatever, right?
Yeah, I
It's
went to
many
my
years. It's like 60 guys.
I went to my 50th, and at my 50th, the day before we had the 50th, one of the guys was killed in a hang gliding accident.
Wow.
Oh, ouch.
So
Yeah.
he didn't make it. And I did a in memoriam
Oh,
for the-
nice.
for the class. So we had 644 people in our senior class, which is
Yeah.
a big high school.
Yeah.
And there were 110 that had passed away.
Really?
How many in the class? 600?
644.
So 110.
I had
That's-
750, but I don't know how many passed away.
The
Yeah,
18%.
it seemed like a huge number, but I looked it up and it's not out of the norm. That's pretty average.
Yeah, right.
Really?
Um,
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do you remember the name of the guy who died hang gliding?
Yeah, Roger Omclove.
What was the last name?
Omclove.
Um,
AMCLOVE.
I was hang gliding probably about that time.
It was in April last year.
Oh, April last year. Oh, this is relatively, okay.
Not when
Yeah.
you were young and
When I was about 50, it is about when I was hang gliding, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, for 15, 16 years.
so what did you do as an in memoriam? Did you have photos of him or you were able
No, so I did it in memoriam for all 110. So what I did was
Oh,
I took the yearbook
yeah,
and took all those little tiny low res black and white
yeah,
images.
with stiff hair and smiles, yeah.
Yeah, one at a time, and I put them in Photoshop and I tried to make them as best I could and put them into a PowerPoint presentation, added music and put their birth date and the day they died
Oh,
underneath their name, of course. And then we ran it through, which took about half an hour to run through. I only gave each class member like 8 seconds, but it still takes a long time for that many.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
Were they, was there any kind of common denominator how they died? That's a lot. So
No, you
it
know,
wasn't the war, it wasn't,
no, I'm
Yeah.
sure we lost a few in the Vietnam War. And I think that most of them just, car accidents, et cetera, et cetera. you know.
Shopping at Target. Massacre.
Yeah. One guy had been shot. I heard about that, but didn't know the cause on half of them, just people that I knew or had gone through something with. So
where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in the exciting town of Bakersfield, California,
Bakersfield.
Wow.
which is very unlike me, only because I transferred there at the end of elementary school. My father was in the military. I was from Maryland, and I came out to California. And my father
Stop.
had a choice of assignments between Boron and Bakersfield.
What's the other one?
Boron, California.
Boron. Okay. Is that
Wow.
also?
That's south of Mammoth Mountain, about 100 miles in the desert.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you survived.
And I survived Bakersfield. It was not my cup of tea, and I did not fit in. But
Where'd you go to college? I mean, that,
I escaped. I came up to San Jose to go to college. So
Ah.
I went to San Jose State for undergrad and grad school. So
yeah, you did escape.
yeah. And journalism and advertising was my major.
Cool.
And that's why I ended up opening a advertising agency 2 years after graduate school.
Good for you. That's pretty impressive.
It was pretty dumb, actually.
But you did it.
Yeah, I did it. I just didn't know any better. I didn't know how hard it was going to be.
Yeah.
But the first, 3 years were seriously
Brutal.
difficult.
Brutal.
And then after that, things kind of fell into place. So
Yeah. My first husband was an architect, and that, similar, it's going on his own. It was really tough.
yeah, very tough. My daughter's an architect.
Oh, is she? It's a
in
great
San Jose.
profession.
Yeah, she loves it. They don't pay enough.
No, they don't pay. It's hard to get established. All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not starving, but at the same time, she looks at all of her friends and with stock options and this and that, and she makes not quite as much as they do in salary, even in the high tech world. I mean, and she's brilliant. She's one of these super smart people. So,
No, it's an undervalued profession. It really is.
Mhm.
A little bit like photography, if you think about it. I mean, there's a few that make it great, or sports, but like for a comparison, where you become famous as an architect. But yeah, most people I don't think find an easy living that way.
That's true. Only thing is, architects come in handy because they keep buildings from falling in on you. They keep you safe.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
But you often have to have a patron. You need somebody that, is your
Yeah,
client.
exactly. Yeah.
See y'all.
All right, folks.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
See you soon. Good night. Good night,
Good
boys.
night.